going to start with Mr. Barrett for 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Commissioner Belanger, why is registering to lobby important?
For transparency, for making sure that Canadians know who's meeting whom about what and what leads to the decision that decision makers are making.
And why are your powers under the Act to investigate important?
To ensure compliance, to ensure that there is transparency, to make sure that the requirements of the Act as set out currently are met.
And what do you think about the shared obligations of parliamentarians and officers of Parliament to ensure Canadians' trust in our democratic institutions?
I believe we do have a very important role to play. In fact, I think agents of Parliament are almost guardians of values. Former Official Languages Commissioner had said that at one point, and I have always believed in that.
I want to talk about, so I've written you some correspondence of late, October 24th, and before that on October the 3rd, both dealing with Mark Carney, an advisor to the Prime Minister, and I want to lay out a bit of why that correspondence was necessary, and then I have a couple questions for you. So first of all, we have, in no particular order, we have the heat pump hustle by Mark Carney, also known as Carbon Tax Carney, where we learned he was using his role as a special advisor to the government in the UK to lobby for his own interests. So we've seen that this is a behavior that he's comfortable undertaking. Now, he, within days of being appointed to this panel of experts to advise the Prime Minister. Now, we know that he is, it's a panel of one. He's the only one there. He landed billions in loans for his self-described friend who heads Telesat. And this was announced as a way to connect Canadians, but we've learned recently that that there are no requirements for a certain number of Canadians to be connected for those billions. We know that he sits on the board at Stripe, and so the government was convinced to have credit card companies cap their fees, but Stripe, where he stands to benefit from his interests, isn't passing those savings on. So they're benefiting from that as well. And we know that his investment firm holds the second largest mortgage insurer in the country, which will directly benefit from the announcement that again came days after his appointment to these changes will allow for longer amortization periods, meaning that Canadians will pay more interest for longer, benefiting his interests again. So I've written you a couple of letters, but Section 10.4. Could you just articulate what Section 10.4 of the Act allows you to do?
It allows me to investigate if I have reason to believe that the investigation is necessary to ensure compliance. Okay.
And you articulated that to me in our most recent correspondence and in past correspondence as well. You also have an obligation to pass things on to the RCMP. What would trigger that requirement?
When I start an investigation, the moment I have reason to believe that an offence has occurred, I immediately suspend my investigation and I forward to the RCMP. And I've done that more than 16 times in the last 7 years.
Do you have any investigations that you have? Have you handed any files to the RCMP that they are currently reviewing?
They have 4 suspended files of mine currently.
So that is to say that you suspended 4 files pending the decision of the RCMP?
I've suspended 16 over the years.
But you have 4
currently, there are 4 that there is continuously to be suspended.
I
yes?
appreciate that precision. Thank you. Are you able to, I want to circle back to that piece about Canadians' confidence in your role Are you able to tell Canadians today? I referred to Mr. Mark Carney as Carbon Tax Carney, but he's quickly earning the moniker of Conflict of Interest Carney. Are you able to tell Canadians if you're currently investigating Mark Carney for potential violations under the Lobbying Act?
I won't confirm whether I'm investigating, and the reason why I don't do that is I do not want to jeopardize any future possible criminal investigation. What I will tell you, as I've said to you in the letter, is that I look at everything. I've opened more than 170 files in the last 7 years. I look at everything. So I can tell you that I am reviewing the matter.
I appreciate you advising us that you're reviewing the matter. Now, if you want to refer something to the RCMP, does the Minister of Justice, is he required to have any intervention or involvement?
You would have to ask the RCMP that. Once I've sent to the RCMP and they do their work, I assume they discuss with the Public Prosecution's Office. I don't believe that.
And if you find that someone has violated the Act, are you required to refer that to a cabinet minister?
Absolutely not, and I would not.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank both of our witnesses for being here and for communicating in the professional and forthright way that you have. I'm going to go to first the lobbying commissioner. As I understand it, and this is my first time asking you questions, but my understanding is you draw a distinction between a review and an investigation. Is that correct?
The review is part of an investigative process because if I start looking for information, it's an investigation. But do I need to pursue it to ensure compliance and start possibly issuing production orders and subpoenas, et cetera, which most of the time I don't have to do because people provide me with the information. But there is a lot of information out there that we obtain and that we start looking at, and very, very quickly we know that we're not going to pursue because there's nothing there. So it's really a process, and it's part and parcel of an investigation. Everything I do it under the section that your colleague has quoted.
The reason I ask that is because, and I may have misheard you, so please correct me if I'm wrong, is that one of the issues that's been raised today is with respect to Mark Carney, and I believe you said that you are looking into it. Yes. I took that to mean you're reviewing it. Is that accurate?
That means that I'm looking into it, and whether I'm in investigating stage of it, I will not confirm that.
Of course. So, and that's why I asked whether there was a difference between looking at something versus an investigation, because I think you gave, 119 or 16, I think that was the number of investigations you had mentioned earlier?
I've opened close to 170 files since I've been in office.
I'm sorry.
I would say close to 25 to 30 led to full-blown investigations.
So would this 170 that you have looked into, would Mark Carney's case fit into that 170 but not into that 20 or 25 that resulted in full-blown investigations?
I will only confirm that everything that I look into fits into that 170. When I start actually investigating, I don't confirm because I do not want to jeopardize possible criminal investigations.
And I understand that. I'm just trying to see where we're at, because when we say I'm looking into something and then it's being done under the authority of legislation, I think you can see. Now, what is the threshold for your looking into something, if you will?
Well, I'll start by saying that I do look into everything. The moment that there are communications with any of you, public office holders, public servants, senators, that are not in our registry, I look into it. Very often that leads to nothing because it'll be a volunteer organization, or there's been one communication that clearly does not meet a 30-hour threshold. But I do look into everything. And then what I'll do is I'll communicate with public office holders to determine whether or not the amount of communication, how many communication occurred over a span of time. And once I get that information, if I have doubts now that we're into lobbying that was not registered, I trigger what we call the investigation, and then it proceeds from there.
So when it comes to Mr. Carney, we have several what I would call discrete areas of interest that I'm interested in. One of them is the heat pump issue. I think my colleague, Mr. Barrett, called it the heat pump hustle, and I'm not going to attempt to steal his quote on that. We also have his involvement with Stripe. We have him issuing a fundraising email on behalf of the Liberal Party of Canada. We have his involvement with Brookfield, and Brookfield then looking for $10 billion of new investments. And then we have $2 billion contract to a company that whose CEO is close to Mr. Carney. Now, are you able to say whether any one of those discrete issues, if you will, would rise to the threshold that I just mentioned of you having to look into something?
I will not comment on a file.
Okay. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have?
You have 20 seconds.
All right. I wish you both all the best. Thank you.